pretty incredible. I see we've got some people in here. This, as usual, I'm going to say this is going to be a quick one, but I don't know if that'll actually happen or not. I'm on my way to a meeting, but I see what's going on in Afghanistan, of course, and how they're turning all of their efforts now internally against the people of the United States. And we've been warning about this for a long time. I've talked about it. I think it's real interesting that, whenever we vacated, at least this is common SOP in the military, if you have to do a retrograde motion, that means a retreat or a changing of direction of the attack, however you want to view it. Hello, everyone. If you leave equipment behind, you only do it for one of two reasons, okay? It's either a booby trap, all right, or you've destroyed it. In other words, you blow it up, you make it so it's totally unusable by the enemy. Well, apparently we didn't do either in Afghanistan, right? So what's really going on here? Well, I've heard some people talk about, well, they can tell where all the weapons go, they can track where they go and all that. Hey, we're done in Afghanistan, okay? We're done there. It was designed to deplete our resources, both our blood and our money. That's what it was about, and also to further us losing respect for our government, which it doesn't deserve respect, but that's part of the psychological operation as well, because now you don't want to even think about restoring the republic, because look at what it turned into, right? So this is a total war on every level. But one of the things that you hear about in the military, of course, and everybody knows this, is no one's left behind. Well, they've lied about that for 60 years. And I could tell you a lot of stories about that, but suffice it to say, we're leaving a lot of people behind today in Afghanistan. We're worrying more, as David Knight said this morning, we're worried more about the Afghans than we are about the Americans that are there. And that's very true. It's always been that way, because there's another agenda here, and I think most of you understand what that is. But at any rate, the fact that they left that equipment in usable condition is unforgivable, because that means they planned it that way. Even in a rushed retreat, retrograde operation, you destroy that equipment or you booby trap it, okay? So there's something really wrong there. I'm not prepared to say what it is. All I will say is that, just as I've been talking about in others, they're using the weaponry they've designed for overseas wars against supposed enemies to test those technologies so that they could bring them back home and use them against us, and that's exactly what's happening. I'm not going to get into the GMI or any of that today. I think everybody should understand by now where this is going and what it is, and if you don't, it's on you, okay? I'm not here to talk about that. The other thing I wanted to bring up real quick, you notice I called this Kryptonite. Now, again, I'm going to go into just a real short little spiritual dissertation here. And if you don't want to hear it, that's fine. I've already given you the political briefing for the day, political and military. But I want to go to this other thing because I found this to be a problem throughout Christian and Jewish history and tradition. And that is, when you read the Eisenman series that I did below, when you listen to that, or you read the Eisenman books, or you study the Dead Sea Scrolls, or you study Christianity and what they talk about, there's something very peculiar about what they say. And it's one of my problems with the character we know as the Apostle James and the entire early Christian, really messianic movement. And those of you who have listened to me should know what I'm talking about, but I'm just going to say this real quick. One of the excuses for their asceticism, which is totally unnecessary, when you go into a period of asceticism, you only do it for a short period of time. God doesn't expect you to stay there your entire life. As a matter of fact, quite the opposite. But for some reason or other, these people did that in Qumran, and it's very often done in Jewish areas, and it's very often done in Christian areas. In other words, you think that if you purify yourself in some way, shape, or form, that then God can come to you, because he can't, this is the concept, God and his heavenly host can't come to you because you're impure and you might spread your impurities to them. Do you realize how asinine and how utterly ridiculous that is? In other words, what these ascetic groups have said is that God can't come and fight for you. His heavenly host can't come and fight for you because you're not pure. You might taint them with your impurity. And my response is this. Are you telling me that God and his heavenly host has a kryptonite that if we're impure, we can destroy them, that they won't be able to work for us? Now, the comeback for that is, well, they're just not going to come unless we're pure. Again, it's not a kryptonite. It's not a question of that. And I just want to make, hi, Roosevelt, real quick. I know I didn't tell you, this hit me up, right? As a matter of fact, partly because of what you sent me on the text this morning. But I just want to make sure that you understand that it's not God that is going to be tainted or his heavenly host by your impurities if you have such things. That's not a kryptonite to those beings. What happens is, all false flags at the Capitol, you mean in Kabul, Liza Jean? Well, let me finish this point. The real problem is that God is showing mercy by not sending his heavenly host or himself to you in your impure condition. That's the real situation. I'll check that out, Roosevelt. Maybe you can text me here in just a minute, because I'm not tuned into that, and I need to be. You're right. And I knew this was going to happen. They're turning from Afghanistan to here. It's exactly what they're doing. But anyway, back on this other thing. What really happens when you're impure is that if God and the heavenly host come to you, their purity will burn you up. They're not in any danger of getting tainted by your impurities, whether they can't go back to heaven or whatever. No. The problem is that if you're impure and God comes to you or the heavenly host in that format, in that way, it could burn you up. It could destroy you. So God not coming to you is showing you mercy. Is showing you mercy. I told you yesterday during the rainstorm, which is one of the reasons why I did that the still small voice is what you want to listen to. But if you ever really get exposed to the presence of God, it's going to be a thunderous opening. And it's because you are the one that's impure, and his very presence, the very presence of the divine, can consume you. So he's showing mercy to you by not coming, or he does a particular thing where he actually places a purity upon you so that you can withstand his presence. I don't expect any of you to understand that. All I'm saying is that this idea that's very evident in the Dead Sea Scrolls and in early Christianity, that God can't come to you if you're impure, is hogwash. It's not because it's bad for God and his angels. It's because it'll destroy you. That's the reason. It's mercy on their part. Okay, I just wanted to bring that up. I am in kind of a hurry, so I've got to get going. But those two things are what I wanted to talk about, okay? Now, as far as this false flag in D.C., I don't know what's happening there. I haven't had the news on, so there's a bomb threat. Actually, God comes easier when we are at our lowest. That's true. That's true. God comes when you least expect him. When you're purifying yourself and you're trying to be ready for him, God comes as a thief in the night. He usually doesn't come then. He does usually come at your weakest point. You're very good, Roosevelt. You're very good. Ezekiel is a good example of that, and I'm going to talk about that when I do my video on the house, the temple, and the mountain. When I get to that, Ezekiel is a very good key to all this. Let me see what this is. It's a threat. Okay. All right. So whatever's going on in D.C., I probably ought to go take a look at that, but I wanted to hit you all up with this morning because of all the nonsense that people have passed down, really for the purpose of making an excuse for their own shortcomings. For instance, with all of the fasting, with all of the praying that James did in Jerusalem, it was still destroyed. And they'll say, well, it's because he was taken out of the way. Well, Okay, that's how you. But that's the whole reason why the whole Gnostic movement in Egypt got started, was because they thought God had abandoned them. Anyway, that's another story. I'm going to go check on this thing on DC as I'm headed out to my meeting. So again, they're turning the war in upon us. You know, they talk about, all the weapons that Americans have, yet it's very convenient that the government forgets to talk about Fast and Furious, where they sent all those weapons to Mexico. Now they've got all of these weapons strewn all over the world, from Vietnam to Somalia to, well, anywhere in Africa, to Iraq and Afghanistan, where they've abandoned this equipment. And that stuff is finding that those munitions and those weapons are finding their way everywhere around the world, and yet they're going to come after your semi-automatic and your means of self-protection. Do you see how evil this is? They're turning it on us, ladies and gentlemen. That's what's going on. All right, I got to go. Hopefully Roosevelt will let me go know what's going on in DC. You all take care. Out here for now.